welcome to my 1937 Austin 7. I'm finally going to do something about the roof, which needs a new sunroof. When the car was resprayed, the tin sheet was taken off the roof and this temporary plywood sheet was put in. Currently, that was 18 years ago, so it's about time I got round to doing something about it. The roof area has always remained rather blank and clearly unfinished. My sunroof has been stored in my shed, but has since been covered up by quite a lot of other stuff. So this is the sunroof. We've got to get it out. So here's my original frame and my bought frame, along with the metal sunroof frame at the back. So these parts are going back to my workshop. This is the original frame from my car, and other than the rear section being a little bit loose, generally the wood is in very good structural condition. And this is my bought-in sunroof rail on wood which is less good. It does show the original roof structure, which seems to be clamped under here and wrapped around this front edge here, and is then tin-tacked or pinned on. Also seems to have some headlining here, and I know there's some wood finishes that go along this edge. The rear sunroof also appears to have some hessian underneath the vinyl. You can see the back corner is not in good condition. Have to get the metalwork off the woodwork, I think. The roof layer is actually trapped between these two parts here, and then folded round and tucked up the side. This is the roof layer on the inside here. It comes under the roof rails and is tucked around the rail and then up the side of the wood and trapped in the wood, along with some sealant on the underside here. And then the rails are screwed into the wood. It's these holes that puzzle me, because they appear to be riveted, but you can't rivet them once the roof lining's in. But they're definitely riveted before the roof lining's put through. This under rail is actually riveted to the main rails, so I need to drill the rivets out. So these are the recovered components. Just got to put it back together again. Easier said than done. So the sunroof parts I've split into its individual components. I've labelled these and rescued one extra from my other piece, which was half decent. Some of the timbers have needed little repairs, like the end here. Some of them were split, so I've re-glued them. And similarly, this end was split and broken, and I've glued that back together as well. I've taken all the little screws out, and you can see that whilst the screw holes in general actually came out, despite the fact they were 80 years old, the screws weren't in too bad a condition. These are my main two rails that run the length of the car. I had thought about switching them over so that I would have new holes to drill to access the roof, but the tops of these are actually tapered or curved to suit the roof, so I'm going to stick with the way that Austin designed it that way, because the curve works that way and I don't want to upset the roof. So I'm going to repair the end and then I'm going to glue it back together. So this is the damaged end, which has had a little bit of wood at the top let into that half. I've cut away the rotten part and the damaged part, glued that together, and then I'll trim this to length. I spent many hours, far more than I did film, repairing the wood so that I can reuse it. It is 80 years old after all. I had to spend a bit of time filling each hole, making sure the glue went down each hole, and then making little personalised wooden inserts to go into each hole, and afterwards cleaning up with a chisel. I felt I made quite a good job of this and ended up with a nice firm wooden surround ready for reuse. The roof rails are generally in good condition, but there is a little bit of rot. I've cut a little patch out and I need to just replace that and weld that in. Let's get on with that then. I was not looking forward to this repair as it was quite tricky. But in actual fact, once it was welded in, it was actually quite a straightforward job. I was quite pleased with the end result. At the point where we need to start taking the roof off. This temporary roof was fitted 18 years ago. It's only a sheet of plywood. So this is the temporary roof off the car. It's quite a large open space, but of course only half of it is actually filled or open to the sun once the roof's in. Be interesting to go for a drive like this. So this is a test fit of the repainted rails, top and bottom. I've actually slid the moving section on to check it will fit. I've been checking whether or not the front will fit the gap on the roof and the width and the holes, etc, etc. And then at the back, this plate is screwed onto the woodwork. You can see I put the woodwork back in. That seems to be all right now. And then these plates have got to line up with these holes here when they're riveted down, but the fabric actually goes in between here first. So it's been a little bit fiddly to get the roof on, but clearly I'm going to have to work at it like this. So I'm actually going to have to screw these rails down onto the wood, having put the wood in the car, and check that they're in the right place for these rails, and then check that this will fit. It's quite a reasonable fit on the roof here, not a problem, but it is a little bit tight at the front on the rails. However, this is the first time that this car has had a sliding sunroof since the 1960s, so at least 55 years plus. I painted all the metalwork with black Rust-Oleum. On the nice hot day that I painted it on, this set really quite quickly and gives a nice hard finish. So we've now got the roof rails painted. They've come up quite well. So the time has come to start putting the metalwork and the wood back into the car. I've started by screwing the wood into the car so it can't move. I've then put a couple of temporary screws, shorter than needed and thinner than needed, into the woodwork at the back. And I've been lining up the roof rails using some of the rivet holes and these self-tapping screws. It's a constant jiggle to get this bit to fit into the front of the roof nicely and to get the rivet holes to line up, which is what I'm using here to line up. Once the rivet holes line up, I can put these temporary screws into the lower roof rail so that the lower roof rail lines up with the outer roof rail. I then need to take the outer roof rail off, and I'm going to put the proper screws into the lower rail under here, but of course access is poor because it's underneath the rail. The wood on the inside of the car had rotted away at this back corner and was rather delicate, and none of the screws actually screwed into anything. So I've managed to remove it. I need to paint this bit obviously, and I've cut it back to here to make a new part to go in here. I'm not going to try and replace this bit. There is the stub of the old piece still there, and it's supported by this metal plate, and again there's a metal plate that goes along here, but I'm going to put a new piece in here. The marks that you see here are where I've welded up the roof. With the hole ready, it's time to cut some hood material. So I've covered the underside in Hessian, A, to cushion the wood, B, so it looks appropriate from the underside, and C, so there's as much material as possible to wrap round here so it doesn't cut then through the vinyl. It also seems to be what I took off originally. With the foam stapled down, we're now in a position to start putting the hooding on. So that's the black vinyl cut to size. I'm going to cover these rails, but not the front bit. And I've started by stapling the vinyl down here, and I'm going to then tension it and work from there. Fortunately, it's a nice hot day, so the vinyl's nice and supple. I've got some stainless 3.5 by 19s and some stainless 4 by 19s. The 4 by 19s heads are slightly bigger. The 3.5mm screws are slightly thinner. However, because the wood has no holes in it, because I've blocked them all up, I'm going to use the majority of the time the 3.5. So a really simple way to make a hole in the vinyl for the hood. Because there's foam and hessian underneath, I can't drill through it. But if I heat a nail up to reasonably high temperature, I can then just put that straight through the vinyl, and it makes a lovely little smell, but it also makes my hole really quite quickly and easily. I've had these 5/8 rivets for years in their very nice, probably 1950s storage of grease, and these are just the right size to use to rivet the roof down. So we need to clean them up and push through the hole so that they come through there. I then need to trim that and flatten it so it looks like this one, and that's what holds the top rail to this bottom rail, trapping the canvas and the hessian between it. So this is the roof with the rails now attached properly, screwed down the centre and riveted to that underbase at the front. There's a hole here that screws into the roof, which I may or may not use, we'll have to wait and see. And then these screw into the car at the front. So here's the sliding roof actually fitted to the rails, and that's the sliding roof in the open position. So here is my car with the repaired lower part of the sunroof dropped into the hole. It's obviously not fully fitted and waterproofed, but it gives you an idea of what it will look like. And the roof rails are correctly attached. They're not screwed, they are actually riveted to the original rails. I'm really pleased with how far we've come and how quickly we've come. Now we've got to restore the sliding section and make the thing waterproof. If you've liked what you see, do like and subscribe, and catch us up when we make this thing a working full sunroof.